Suddenly human. The crew goes through a time warp and emerges in a clumsy, terrible, rejected Season 1 episode.
I think we're going to disagree on this one. That's going to be funny. The Enterprise is responding to a distress call from a Talarian ship that is leaking dangerous radiation.
Another Talarian ship responds, but it will take hours to get there, and Troy senses life on board.
So Riker takes an away team over, where they find that prop with the glowing orange light tubes that we've already seen twice on this channel, once in this same show already. And they also find 5 teenage survivors, one of them human.
Beverly removes his helmet just to show us he's human, without worrying about keeping his head still because of head or neck trauma. Plot first. The human kid's name is Jono, and Beverly is trying to talk to him, but then all the Talarians go nuts.
Then Picard walks in and starts acting like a new teacher who doesn't know how to control the class.
Please, may I have your attention?
Once Jono realizes Picard is the captain, he responds and requests to be returned to his own captain, Endar.
Beverly tells Picard that Jono has evidence of a history of injuries which she believes were caused by the Talarians, and she also thinks he's a victim of Stockholm Syndrome.
I like how she immediately makes all these assumptions. Troy sets Jono off. They don't really listen to him or what he wants, and then they confine him to quarters because that's much easier for them.
He identifies himself as a Talarian and starts making that annoying sound again, which he says is a mourning custom, and causes Worf to leave.
Worf also tries to fit him into the mold they want Jono to be in.
I am Talarian.
You are confused.
They identify Jono as Jeremiah Rosa, the grandson of an admiral whose parents were killed by Talarians.
The crew then immediately starts referring to him as Jeremiah without a second thought, even though he said that's not the name he goes by. Since he doesn't respond to women or people of lesser rank, Troy says Picard is the only choice to connect to Jono.
It's up to you, Captain.
For the episode, I thought that was okay, because they have shown that Picard was the only one he would respond to, and because Picard's reaction was amusing, but in real life, it would obviously have made more sense to send him to someone who wasn't the captain.
Jono is still pissed, and he has some justification.
This is a cage. I'm still your captive.
Oh no, not at all.
Lieutenant Worf, escort this young man to quarters. He is to be confined there until further notice.
Jono says tradition says he lives with his captain, and I did like how Picard reacted to Jono touching all his stuff.
I thought Patrick Stewart's acting was really good throughout these scenes.
When Picard is grilling Jono about the seeming abuse he's received, Jono sums up the entire episode.
You understand nothing.
Picard doesn't have any success in really reaching Jono, so he talks to Troy and tells her about his lack of facility when it comes to children.
You're probably not aware of this, but I've never been particularly comfortable around children.
Really?
This episode made me pretty annoyed.
Troy basically tells him to suck it up and go be a parent. He goes back to Jono and finds him listening to some shitty rock music.
And then he attempts to guilt trip him into becoming human using the death of his parents as leverage. It's like they expect him to immediately flip a switch and, quote, become human again, and then they can just drop him off on Earth and be on their merry way. After reintroducing this repressed trauma to Jono, Picard gets called away because his pizza is ready, and Jono has to deal with it all by himself.
Picard talks to Captain Endar, who is played by Sherman Howard, who was Bub in Day of the Dead.
He also voiced Van Pelt in that weird Jumanji cartoon.
Picard questions him about Jono, and Endar calls Jono his son. Picard allows him aboard, and Endar says he adopted Jono as part of a Talarian custom after destroying a human colony who he says were trespassing, and that his own son had been killed by humans. We get some more stereotypical TNG discussion about traditions of different cultures, and Picard says he will not allow Endar to take Jono back.
One day he will be a great warrior.
Doesn't he deserve to become more than that?
Picard reveals he's called for backup, but Endar reveals he has also called for backup, and of course they never ask Jono what he wants, but they don't have to because he has repeatedly said what he wants. They just don't listen.
Picard finally decides to let Jono and Endar see each other, and Endar tells Jono that they may go to war if Starfleet doesn't let him go back.
Since Jono is at the age of decision where he can choose where he wants to go, The crew tries to use that as a loophole to trick Jono and force Endar to concede.
Endar's entire claim on Jono is based on Talarian custom. He'd have a hard time backing away from it now.
His grandmother, Admiral Rosa, sends a message to him telling him that he is the last of his line. He is understandably stressed out, so Picard takes him to the holodeck where they play space racquetball.
It's meant to get out Jono's frustration, but of course Picard has to explain all of the rules and boundaries first, which was a great, subtle way to show the differences between Talarian and human cultures. But of course it's lost in a sea of bullshit, Battletoads-esque level of slamming it into our faces for the rest of the episode. And as expected from my own racquetball experiences, it causes the repressed horrors of Jono's past to become overwhelming. I could relate.
They go to 10 Forward, where Jono has a first encounter with ice cream, but he is apparently also unfamiliar with basic physics and somehow gets it all over Wesley's face. Picard and Riker are surprised to see Jono laugh.
And they're happy that this incident has flipped that switch and Jono is now human and they can just walk away.
That night, or whatever, they're in space, he goes to Picard's room, which is easily accessible, and stabs him.
That shot was not very convincing, though. It looks like the blade totally missed.
I honestly thought he was stabbing himself.
The Talarian warships enter the area, and Endar claims that he holds the crew responsible for Jono's actions, and demands that Jono be returned in 5 minutes. Regular minutes, not space minutes.
Jono goes to Picard in sickbay, and says he must be put to death for attacking a superior officer.
Picard still has to f***ing ask why Jono is doing what he is doing. It's incredible that he has to be on his deathbed before the message starts to get through.
Another stereotypical display of putting one's own cultural expectations onto someone from another culture. Jono says he felt that he had betrayed Endar, and Picard takes him up to the bridge.
And he reveals how idiotic the whole crew has been this entire episode, and I was a little annoyed that Beverly was not on the bridge, because she was probably the worst offender, and if anyone needed to hear what Picard was saying, it was her.
We tried to convince him. In so doing, we thoroughly failed to listen to his feelings, to his needs.
And so, the crew has learned a valuable lesson that they will be sure to carry with them and never make the same mistake again. Suddenly human. Overall,
this episode could easily have been overly sappy or really dumb with the cultural differences, but I thought it worked pretty well overall. Jono's character wasn't annoying like I was afraid he would be, at least not when he wasn't making that noise. The characters and their relationships were not as simplistic as I would have expected, and their perspectives and reactions felt authentic. And it was good to see Picard admit that he was wrong in the end. It was nothing spectacular, but I thought it was a pretty solid episode. I gave it a B+.
Really?
Yes.
I completely disagree with pretty much everything you just said.
Of course you do.
Well, let me say what I said, and then maybe one of us will change our views. Namely you. I gave this one a D-.
Jeez.
I thought we were done with this clumsy-ass, force-feeding Season 1 bullshit where the Federation's values supersede all others. The entire episode, the crew keeps trying to force Jono to do everything they think he should do. They are convinced that Jono truly wants to erase his whole life up to that point and start fresh from right now. And when they can't convince him, they force him to act and then use the Talarian customs as shackles to drag him back to Earth forcibly. For the Federation being so accepting of others, they can't get around that because despite almost never being around humans, Jono looks like a human, so he has to be a human with other humans, and there is no room for negotiation. The episode tried to put some depth into the story with Picard's backstory through Troy, generational gaps not understanding each other, and Picard getting better with kids, but to me, all of those fizzled out into nothing. I think the words "you don't understand" must not be in the Federation dictionary, because they understand everything apparently and are never wrong. It reminded me of Up the Long Ladder, where they make all these decisions for other people because it's what they want to do.
I agree about everyone in Starfleet being stupid. I thought everything else about the episode worked well. I thought Jono was a good character. I thought all the conflicts made sense.
I thought this one was awful. I was making that freaking noise the whole time I was watching it.